more mixing, beat video, how to rep a present, how to make a home studio under 20,000, EQ melodies, I guess. All right, before we start, I want to mention that I always recommend mixing and doing EQ moves and everything with the whole mix playing. For this tutorial and the tutorial purposes, I'm actually going to just pretty much be soloing these. I have a little bit of the drums over here to play in and out and show you a couple cool tricks, but to really show you these tricks and how to implement them, I'm actually just going to be playing majority of the melodies that you'll be hearing strictly in solo together, so that I can show you kind of and explain these tricks that you can implement. But what this video really is to do is to just give you a bunch of different tools and methods that you can use to combat issues that you have with audio. That's the number one thing I always preach, is you have to know why you're going to bring up a compressor or why you need an EQ. You need to hear it. What is the issue and what are the tools you can use to resolve it? So this is what we have playing. I'm going to go ahead and just play the whole beat. You guys are going to be familiar with this beat. I posted it a while ago. So the first thing that we're going to do is just listen. That's what you need to do. We need to literally just listen to the mix and see what it's asking for. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. I'm just going to play the melodies, like I said, for tutorial purposes. We're going to listen to it, and I'm going to tell you what I think some issues are. So let's get straight into it, because the first thing we need to do is listen. So I'm going to show you what we have. We have a guitar, and we have electric guitar, keys, and then we have a flute that comes in. So right off the bat, the flute is cutting through at parts it needs to cut through at, but there's sometimes it's kind of getting buried. And I hear a lot of like low mids in that guitar and those keys that are clashing into each other, but they're also just muddying up the melodies. Like the guitar sounds good, but there's a lot of low mid range that I want to get rid of. So just by listening, I'm already starting to get an idea of what doesn't sound good. And if you're not familiar with low mid range or high end, just study an EQ, listen to one. If I bring one up and show you, most of them are labeled, and you can kind of see FL's EQ is labeled, which kind of makes it easy for you. So the part I'm talking about is this area, this low mid and mid range, right? So anywhere from about 300 up to 500 is kind of where I'm hearing the issues. The first thing that I definitely want to do is make sure that I'm playing my drums and my 808s so that I can understand where I need to create space for those to be played too, because the guitar definitely has a lot of low energy. So with that being said, since it has so much low energy, it's going to clash with this 808 at times. Not necessarily cutting through, but since the 808 is following root notes of this guitar, I can actually just cut out a lot of that low end in the guitar and let the 808 just fill it out. And I'm going to do some subtractive EQ. You always want to do subtractive EQ first, because before additive EQ, subtractive EQ can actually make things sound brighter. So let me show you, for example, if we solo this guitar, right? Let's say I cut out a little bit of low end and a little bit of this mid range that's kind of building up. Watch how this guitar is already going to get brighter. So let's go ahead and turn it before. After. So you hear, I didn't actually go over here and boost anything to make it brighter. Just by clearing up some of the low end and the mid range that's kind of hiding the top end of it, we can actually hear that it gets brighter. So with that said, what I'm going to do is play all these together. I'm actually going to play my 808 too. We'll leave the clap and hi-hat on, and I'm just going to start doing some EQ moves. So the first thing I definitely want to do with this guitar is take out some of this low end. And when I have the whole mix playing together, I can actually start to cut out low end. We can use a shelf, or we could do a roll off, and we could do a low cut. So what I'm going to do is play the whole mix together and start to roll this off until it starts to sound too thin, and then back it off so it doesn't. And the reason you want to play it all together is because if we were to do this in solo, we'd actually be cutting out a lot or a little bit, compared to when we play the whole thing and we start to do a cut. We can actually hear, okay, it's still not sounding too thin. We can actually go more and make more space because we're mixing as a whole. So with that said, let me set it back to where it was. And another cool trick to really understand if you're making space, let me show you, is we can take the 808 and these together, right? We can go over to the master, and with an EQ, we can actually put a high cut on, and we can just listen to the low end and the mid range and see what the clashing is. So let me go back over to this EQ and let's kind of turn it off and let's just listen. We hear a lot of buildup, a lot of clashing, right? Watch what happens when I start to move this over on the guitar. Let's take the keys out real quick so we just hear the guitar. Watch what happens. Let's do before and after. So here's before. 808's not really present. There's a lot of rumble. After. So that's one way you can train your ear to kind of understand what's happening down there, is to just put a high cut on and take all of that out. So we actually don't need this. We'll just cut it back out. Let's go over to the guitar and let's really just continue to just make this sound better. So let's go ahead, solo these, and I'm actually going to throw it in mono so I can hear them clashing into each other. I'm going to just do EQ moves as I hear. Turn these down a little bit. So I want some of that mid-range out. Carve out some of those low mids. All right, that's sounding good. And like I said, we're just gonna have these in solo for the tutorial purposes, but make sure to keep them all going so you can really train your ear. So let's go over to these keys next, right? A lot of low mids I don't want either. I want this to be a bit brighter. I like the tone of them being dark, but they're a little bit muddy. So I'm just gonna shelf, actually. Don't wanna do a low cut. I like the low end that it has and it's not clashing too much. Just wanna shelf it out. So we do narrow and we go hunt. All right, that's sounding good. See before and after. See, we haven't even done additive EQ and it's already sounding so much better. So the next thing I want to do is actually go over to this flute. And I don't necessarily think there's too much I want to take out on the flute. I kind of just want to add some top end to it and give it some more bite. I'm gonna go hunt for that. And you got to be very careful in like this 4K area, because 4K can bring something forward or back in the mix, especially like electric guitars, very easily. But it also is like one of the #1 frequencies that can pierce our ears and just make something sound very unpleasant is 4K. So you got to use it wisely, especially on vocals too. It can kind of bring vocals forward in the mix, but if you use too much of it, it is one of those frequencies that is just kind of unbearing. Most of the time it's cut out of electric guitars, like heavily distorted guitars. So let's go hunt and find the sweet spot for this flute and then boost it, because I don't want to necessarily take too much out. I think it's going to just need a nice boost. Has some nice air to it right here. See what it would sound like thinned out. Yeah, we'll just do a shelf. We'll shelf out a little bit. It was sounding a bit better. It's helping out with that brightness. So if we flip this back to stereo now, watch, it's gonna literally open up a lot. And before, let's turn them all off. Pretty muddy. Turn them on. just listen with most of the subtractive EQ going on, how much brighter the drums sound. It's crazy. The hi-hat, the clap, the snare sounds brighter. The kick and 808 are coming through so much more. And literally all we did is subtractive EQ to make space. And on the flute, we did a little bit of additive EQ. But I'm going to, in the video, do a chop right here so you can hear before and after. Let's go. See, that's crazy. Literally so much subtractive EQ and our drums changed. Our whole mix got brighter. And so with these frequencies, we're taking away bad frequencies and revealing the good frequencies that are kind of hidden and like boxed in by all of the mid-range that was kind of messing it up. So with that said, what I want to mention too is when you're doing boosts or subtracting, you always want to make sure your gain staging is correct. So we boosted about almost 6 dB on this flute. So I'm going to just back it out and make sure when I flip it back and forth, we're getting the same dB reading, because I don't necessarily want it to be louder. And that's what's happening since we boosted so much. I just wanted to change the tone of it. And it necessarily won't always be, okay, you boosted 6 dB, so back 6 dB off. Just use your ears. You can use meters too. And just listen and make sure when you flip back and forth, we're getting the same volumes. And we needed to do that over here as well. I kind of was speaking so much I forgot to mention it, but we're doing a lot of cutting here. So let's make sure that when we flip back and forth, we're not losing volume. As you can see, we just did. Okay, that's similar. This one we haven't done much to. This just sounded good and it's a filler, so it's okay. Let's check this. Needs to go up a tiny bit. All right, so these are working better together. So literally all you need to do is just listen to the mix. And another good thing to do is throw it in mono when you're listening to it. You can solo these if you just want to hear them real quick, but try to mix with drums in it as well. And as much as the mix as you can, so you can really hear what's going on. But initially listen and see what moves need to be made, what's happening. This had a lot of low mid-range buildup, and it was hiding a lot of the good tones in the frequencies, and it was kind of masking a lot of that nice, pleasant high end. And just listen to what the mix needed. And then I went in and used the tool necessary to do that. So now I'm actually going to go back and add some brightness to this guitar. Kind of want those strings to come out. So I'm actually going to get a waves EQ. And what's cool about this EQ is it has a really, really nice high-end bite to it. So I'm going to play all these together, and I'm going to boost up some of this high-end right here. Go for that 8 to 10K. Show you what this sounds like. The Pultic EQs are really nice. So I'm over exaggerated so you can hear it. And I'm going to jump between, I'll probably be around 8K to like 10 or 12. It's a very broad one. So I like 5K. I'm going to go over here and boost up. Back off the output a little bit since we boosted. And then I'm going to just pan this flute a little bit over to the right and this guitar a little bit to the left. And we're good. It's sounding a lot better. All right, thank you guys so much for watching. If you did like this video, leave a thumbs up. You guys can follow me on all social medias at Lifestyle Did It. Make sure to hit my site, lifestyledidit.com, for everything else. Other than that, subscribe to your boy, push notifications. Thanks.